Let's bring in Quinn Buckner, former NBA player and working for Fox Sports in Indianapolis, the Pacers analyst. Hey, Buck, good to talk to you again. How would you sum up what happened yesterday between the Pacers and the Cavs?
Well, with the Pacers, the Pacers have been playing like this all year, and they're very confident. But they know that they're playing against LeBron James, who's, you can make the argument. I'll make it. You don't have to make it. He's the best player in the game. And they knew going in there that it was going to be tough to get any kind of win. So I thought they played with a greater enthusiasm. But I also think that as LeBron is trying to figure this team out, what he's looking at are some guys on his team with Clarkson, with Hood. Nance, I thought, played up to the moment. The other guys that looked to me a little bit shell-shocked, and since they haven't been together for a while, you could see that they weren't as quite in sync as I think the Pacers are, because this lineup has been the same for predominantly the year.
Oladipo doesn't seem afraid, and what surprised me is, the Cavs have no interior defense, and if that's the case, then Oladipo, I'd just put the ball in his hands and say, go in. Whatever's there, take whatever you want to take, because I don't think Cleveland can do anything unless they bring in Tristan Thompson. So what's Cleveland do to counteract what happened in Game 1?
Well, I expect them to come out and, first of all, play with a great deal more energy than they did yesterday. Because, first of all, you get basically embarrassed at home in a playoff game. So I think they'll do that. And I think defensively is where you'll probably see a lot more energy. Obviously, Oladipo is the person, that's the go-to guy for the Pacers. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them just try to get the ball out of his hands. The way the Pacers have played, though, what Victor is really good at is sharing. It's not like he has to make the big play. He just, if the moment's there, he'll make it. But I think he'll share it with his teammates. And you got guys, Bogdanovich can shoot the ball. Miles played well yesterday, which I thought was really huge. The two guards, Corey Joseph, Collison played good. And Lance gives them energy. But these guys have been playing. Again, this is not like they're out of character. This is just the way they've played all year long. And so I wasn't surprised to see them play the way they did. I was a little more surprised that Cleveland didn't have the kind of resistance that I thought they would have. But that's what I expect to be very different on Wednesday.
I know Victor Oladipo said that he was motivated a little bit by what Dan Gilbert, the Cavs owner, said at the time when Paul George was dealt to Oklahoma City and they got Sabonis and you got Victor, and that they should have gotten more. Buck, everybody around the league said the same thing. It wasn't like, it was just Dan Gilbert. I'm sure people in Indiana probably thought, wait, that's all we got for Paul George?
Well, I think there was that sentiment was pervasive. You're absolutely right. It was the pervasive sentiment. The nature of the media is, they took that and ran with it for today. That's the nature of that beast. Victor did it. He acknowledged it, first of all. And once you acknowledge it, it gives people opportunity for that. What Victor's been, what he's got to do, and what he's been doing, this entire team, all of these guys on this team are trying to prove something. Victor's been traded twice. Got a shot in Orlando. That didn't work out. He goes and plays with Westbrook, which I think those combinations were really good for him, because in Orlando they tried to play him at point guard initially, and he really didn't understand the position. And we're both alumni of Indiana University, and I've watched him. He didn't know what that was. He got better at that. Then he goes and watches Russ. You watch Russell Westbrook, the way he plays, he's got to train at a high level. So I think Victor being there gave him a chance to see, hey, I thought I was getting ready, but I wasn't ready for what this is about. And because this year, the thing that's, I think, the two things you got to have in this business, if you got to be in great physical shape, but mentally you got to be a lot tougher. And I think that's where he really kind of advanced. Now, what happens, not unlike any player, and it just doesn't have to be a great player, but any player, you always should be finding something to keep you motivated in this game. It's a long season. There's a lot of work that's involved. And I think that, whether or not people thought that Pacers got enough for Paul George was part of that. Dan Gilbert happened to say that. But you also remember Dan Gilbert and the Cleveland Cavs were trying to get Paul George as well. So I'm sure they felt like their package was better than what you could get from Oklahoma City. So I'm sure there's some combination of that feeds into that thought process.
Yeah, that's a good point. Quinn Buckner joining us, Fox Sports Indianapolis, Pacers analyst. A favorite Larry Bird story?
I don't tell Larry Bird stories.
Do you tell Michael Jordan stories?
Larry is such a unique personality. I don't have necessarily stories on him. What challenges me is I marvel at people who think the guy is a hick. Larry is one of the smartest, pragmatic people I know. And I mean, and my mother, God rest her soul, was very bright. Coach Knight and Bill Russell are probably the two brightest people that I know. Larry is maybe right under that in that category. And when people keep talking about him being a hick, Larry understood what he understands as well as anybody is personalities and people. And that's why he would do his junk talking for airing here on radio, because he understood people who would let that bother them and what they would do when it bothered them. That's the way Larry – that was his gamesmanship. So that's really the only story I can tell you about Larry. I just think he's one of the brightest guys that I know. So that's my story on Larry. What else you want to know?
Well, okay. Didn't we talk about this before when you guys played the Chicago Bulls first round of the playoffs? And you guys went out. It might have been you and Roby, and you went out with Bird, and the Chicago Bull cheerleaders bought you beers, figuring that they could get Larry drunk, and then Larry lit them up, and then walked off the floor and walked by the cheerleaders and said, "Thanks for the beers."
I didn't tell you the story, but the story is true. that is very typically Larry.
Okay, all right.
He knew right away. He knew what was happening. He knew right away what was happening. And again, okay, so we talk about motivation. For Larry, that's another motivation for him. So he could have that in his mind. So when he walked off the court, he could let you know, hey, you can do whatever you want. Doesn't make a difference to me.
I love that.
But that's Larry.
I love that. That he knows that the cheerleaders are buying him beers, and then he just thanked him for the beers after I think you guys eliminated the Bulls. You're okay. So you don't tell Bird stories. Do you have you were best friends with Bird and with Michael Jordan? I mean, but you don't. Do you tell Jordan stories? You got a Jordan story for me?
No, I don't have a Jordan story for you. I really don't. Michael is obviously he's done very well. He's a very bright guy. Their personalities are very similar. They're both a little bit OCD, whether you believe it or not, and you can tell it by. And this may sound strange to people. You can tell it when you walk into their houses. Everything has a place, both of them.
Uh-oh.
And I think it speaks to they need order in order for them to have their success, because that's just the way they're wired. So that means it's about a process. And both of them are very process-oriented guys, and I think that's why they've had success, not only in the league, but since they've been out of the league. But I don't really tell a lot of stories. I'm not a storyteller. That's probably why I'm still their friend.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't speak out of school when it comes to that. Okay, here's my question, Buck. If I had Larry Bird at 30 years of age against LeBron James at 30 years of age, both healthy. And Bird, I think, averaged 30 a game that year. Who would you take? Bird at his peak, LeBron at his peak. One season.
I'd be hard pressed not to take Larry. Now that may be there may be some personal bias there. But I'd be hard pressed not to take Larry, just because I don't think. But we're really splitting hairs here about players. You can get into the era thing. You're just talking about two guys that winning is paramount, and more importantly, they understand that the necessity to have their teammates be as successful as they are. They really do, and they both work at it, because if they do that, those guys make a bigger contribution, and it's less of a load. But if they have to take the load, they take it. They're very, very similar. So that's splitting hairs, but I'd probably take Larry.
Barkley and the crew were talking about this yesterday, where they were talking about you can't stop James Harden. And it feels I sound like the guy who says get off my lawn, but it feels like he gets away with an awful lot. He's physical, uses that shoulder, and he's been known to add a step or two traveling. But how would you rank what you see with Harden with the greats of all time scoring? Because now Kareem was nobody could defend Kareem. I think that's the one play in basketball, no one could ever guard Kareem. If Kareem missed, it's because Kareem missed, not because you were guarding him. But as far as guys that you can't defend, where does James Harden fit in that category?
I don't know how do you get in the category, but he's the same way. Regardless of what he gets away with, part of it he gets away with it because he's just that good, and he understands the nuances of the rules that well. But he can't be guarded. I'm sorry. You like I have watched this for many, many years. I've not seen anybody with the ball in their hands as much as he has it in his hands, even though it's a different era game, to be able to score the way at will. He scores at will. And now what he's done, and this is principally in the last, I think, 2 years, what he's done better. He's a better playmaker. He is a much better playmaker, and he got it. You know, it takes guys a while to understand. You know, you come in this league, and it's been solely your game that's pretty much got you here. But your game has pretty much been offensive-minded about you. At some point, you start recognizing it's got to be about the greater good and the balance of the team. Michael had figured that out, you know, from Carolina, which the system they have, God rest his soul, with Dean Smith and all of that. Michael had to go get 63 points against the Celtics and lose before he was convinced that it was more important that he figured out not only where he needed to score and when he needed to score, but how he got his teammates involved in the game. Otherwise, you don't win championships. No one can do this by themselves. Kareem couldn't do it by himself at any place he's been. He played with a lot of other great players, and many of them, like Larry and the great players, are probably going to be in the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done as you look at this era. That's just the way it is. And Harden has figured that out. If they win the championship, that will be the reason he wins the championship. His scoring is important, but getting everybody else involved. Clint Capella, how about him yesterday? This guy, about 4 years ago, was barely doing anything on the court, and now they got him. And you have to do when you give out the book report, you got to figure out where's Capella. So that's all part of it.
Who's more unguardable, Harden, Jordan, Kobe? Anybody else you want to put in there? LeBron?
They're all in the same category. They really are. They're just different eras, but they're all in the same category.
But Harden,
those guys,
Harden takes that three. Mike didn't use the three, but it feels like inside outside. Harden is going to get free throws. He can take you off the dribble. He can shoot the three. I don't know if there's anybody else. You know, Kobe could do that too, but I don't think he was as good a three-point shooter. So is Harden maybe above Jordan?
No.
He's not.
No, I'm not going to do that. What Michael got was his shot. That and Harden just is a better three-point shooter. But if the three-point shooting had been a more intricate part of the game at that point, when Michael was at his peak, he'd have figured that out. He didn't need it. What Michael would do is instead of taking a three-point shot, he'd take the ball and he'd dunk on you and you foul him. He'd get a three-point play. I mean, so it's 6 one way and half dozen the other. When you look at it, the net effect was the same. And it became a lot like the three-point shot that Harden makes when he's covered. It becomes a bit debilitating when you watch those guys go in and make the plays that they want to make when they have to be made. That's what great players do.
Buck, good to talk to you again. Maybe next time you'll have a Jordan story for us or a Bird story.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. Thank you, Quinn. That's Quinn Buckner, Fox Sports, Indianapolis.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.